Yoko Taro is an interesting dude. If you've ever seen a interview with him, he wears a big mask. He doesn't like to show his face. He's a very reserved individual. The man is also 52, which I think is also pretty cool because you can't tell his age when you see him in interviews. Um, Yoko Taro started off not really wanting to be part of the games industry, but after graduating from university, he got a job for 3D CGI design at Namco. He would later leave Namco, join Cavia, who was made up of a bunch of ex-Namco employees, or Kavia, whatever you want to say. And his first project would be Drakengard, which would launch him into the direction that he went in. He actually wasn't the original director for Drakengard. It was a different dude, but he got pulled away for a different project, and they were just kind of like, you, Yoko Taro, do this, do this game." And that really gave him the keys to form the style of writing and gameplay that you know today. Yoko Taro was raised by his grandmother because his parents were not home often due to working. So he didn't have a strong relationship with his parents, but he had a strong relationship with his grandmother. Apparently, she left a really strong impression on him. Also, he was influenced, his writing was influenced by a story he heard as a young child about a local boy who slipped off of a roof and died. Not only would that influence the tone of his stories, but also the humorous elements. He somehow found humor in the fact that this boy slipped off the roof and died. But it's like a dark humor almost.
Banana
Um,
peel.
yeah, banana peel on the roof. Who knows? Um, so he has a very strange way of writing his stories. It's called backward script writing, where he writes the endings of the games first. The ideas he wants to get across are in the very end, and then he goes backwards and figures out how he can get from the start to those endings naturally. And this reflects in all of his games. They all usually have these crazy philosophical, dark, and humorous endings that you may not see coming when you first start the games. Um, there was an interview that I watched where it was like a panel, and he was talking about how he sees game design, and it's really interesting to me, and it explains a lot. And it also explains why I like him. I can't show like a graph or anything, but he had like a graph that was like it was like a circle. It was like a circle with three layers. The inner layer was what's possible in a video game, and the outer layer was what's not possible. Now, the outer layer with what's not possible is like infinite budget, being able to show certain like sexual acts and things like that in a video game. And then what is possible is, of course, the stuff you usually see in video games. But he described this strange barrier around what's possible called, like, I forget what he called it, but I'm gonna call it like the wall of unknown or something. And his goal is to break that wall and get between what's possible in a game and what's not possible. And that explains a lot about how he designs his video games. um a lot of his games end up with these really striking philosophical themes that hit you very hard in the end. Um, they're oftentimes the story is more important than the gameplay. Some of the games have purposely terrible gameplay. Like the first Drakengard actually has pretty monotonous gameplay. But he did that for the purpose that it's like a Muso style game. You're killing tons of people, but you're not supposed to enjoy it because he doesn't get why you would enjoy killing hundreds of people. Other games show people killing hundreds of other characters, and he's like, well, you'd be crazy if you like that. So he wrote the main character of that game to be crazy, and you're not supposed to enjoy actually doing it. He also was like, the first Nier game was inspired by 9/11 and the war on terror, which is really interesting, where there's two sides coming at each other that both think they're in the right. And that's really cool to see from like an outside perspective. We're of course in the US, so we've only seen one perspective basically our entire lives. But it's really interesting to see like him be inspired by that of all things to write a video game narrative. Super interesting dude. Of course, library of games he's worked on is pretty small because Drakengard was his first game that he actually directed. He's like did some stuff for like Namco before that. But basically, it's just the three Drakengard games. They're spin off the Nier games. I guess like the phone one counts too, and the Voice of Cards games, which he did recently. Which even those, while they're not as like dark and deep, they still follow his trend of trying to break through that wall of unknown with the how he incorporates like physical tabletop elements with a turn-based traditional RPG, which is very interesting. Also, he's known for hiding a bunch of his story and manga and stage plays. The man has probably more stage plays than he does video games. Let me count here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's like 11 stage plays, and I swear to God, all of them matter to his games. Yeah, he's a
stage play
like
to be performed.
Yes, yeah, like an actual stage play. Like he writes and creates stage plays in which actors will get up on the stage and perform stories that will matter for his games, for like context within his games. So like there's like a ton of them for Nier Automata called the Yorha stage plays, which started in 2014. Now Automata didn't come out till 2017, so that should tell you a little bit about that. That he's always thinking outside of the box when it comes to his games and characters. Yeah, he's just a really interesting guy. I fell in love with him after I played the first Nier, and the more I learn about him, the more interesting he is. And Yoko Taro is my daddy.
Daddy's a sweet potato.
What do you think his best game is to this point?
Yeah. That's tough because like my favorite one is the first Nier, of course. I talk about it all the time. But in terms of like critical reception, in terms of like gameplay and budget and storytelling, it's probably Automata. That's probably where he's because that game did really like well and has. I actually just replayed it and I like you got like a newfound appreciation for it after playing it again for the second time. Probably there, but that's also the game that kind of launched him from like cult status into more of a mainstream. Like now people know who he is.
Yeah, for sure.
Other than like nerdy fans.
Yeah, I remember when that game came out. I had no idea what it was, and a lot of the people I was hanging out with were really pumped for it, and they loved it. And yeah, it was interesting to see how that just somehow became a mainstream game, even though I feel like the past games weren't that big. I think maybe
absolutely not.
Maybe him grouping with whatever that what's the studio? Platinum. I think that probably was a good call to get that crowd.
Yeah. To launch him forward.
He sounds like a very conscious writer, like as far as like writing games. Backwards planning is something like I understand with my professional background. I don't think it's probably not exclusive to him, but I think it's just something he uses to his advantage.
I know it's not exclusive to him. I think it's unique for the games industry, maybe for a lot of
his perspective. It's probably more for it's unique in that he's doing it towards the ends of the fourth wall breaking, because that's his idea in mind. So I guess that's where my question comes in is like, do you feel like he ever tried to break the fourth wall and like messed up, or not like messed up, but like went too far, or like some along those lines? Because I feel like when you're like trying, that's your approach, that's your mentality, you would come across that point where you're getting dangerously close. I'm not saying it as a means of like messed up, but like it's like you start to question it. You know what I'm saying?
I don't think so. The closest he's come is the two Nier games, and both of those games have elements in the very end, which I guess I'll talk about for a second. Spoilers for people that want to play through those games entirely. So the first game, you actually have a choice near like one of the fourth ending where you sacrifice yourself And when you sacrifice yourself as a character, it's not also just the character sacrificing himself, it's you sacrificing your game. Everything you slowly watch as everything in your inventory, everything in your stats, everything you've done, collected all the quests, get erased. Your save file gets erased. You've given yourself up. And that breaks the fourth wall, but it's super impactful. And there's also one for Nier Automata in the end where you have a choice to also do the same sort of thing, but to help a random stranger, to help a random player in their game. Which is also super impactful and unique. So while he comes close, I don't think it's ever like, because when you think of fourth wall breaking, you think of like the finger wagging, like this is a video game, ha 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 ha, like that sort of fourth wall break where he's like directly, I guess addressing the audience. It never gets that far, but it does get far enough to where the game uses mechanics that are generally not used in a video game, like erasing your save file to progress a narrative in a very impactful way.
Okay, so it's not about like the ideas being like where he's pushing the bound, like I guess the content ideas. It's not like he's talking about like difficult topics or something. It's more about.
No, he is. He totally is.
But your premise that you're like that in your suggestion, it's like it's a mechanical sense of like, oh, you have to be able to sacrifice is a mechanical everything.
Sense. He does touch upon dark topics as well, but it's never in like a untasteful way. It's never like, I don't know, like I'm trying to think how to phrase this. I don't know. I just think it's like, even when he does something that's like in the first Nier game where like you find out you've been killing human souls, and like you find out that like the small ones you kill have been kids and they drop school books and you didn't know that the entire game. Even then, it's still done in like a tasteful way to where like the game wants you to feel bad about it. Like, haha, you killed kids. It's like, oh man, like you might actually be the bad guy here. You didn't know it, So that's sort of the framing for a lot of the stories as well. Is like, even when it goes too far, it's never distasteful with how it does it. Also did an interview with a sock puppet, which is amazing. Do you guys ever like? You guys, I mean, I'm sure you know, but like how oftentimes like the funniest people are like, or like the most depressed people, that tends to be like the thing with like comedians. Like look at like Robin Williams, right? It's like usually like that's like your brain coping with depression is to like force the opposite to happen, right? It's humor.
I sort of disagree with the concept that Robin Williams was depressed, but
well,
he had a debilitating disease.
Well, okay, maybe I don't know much about Robin Williams, but still, just in general, oftentimes the comedians and funny people are also very depressed people, and I get that vibe when I listen to Yoko Taro talk, which he hates doing interviews anyway. He said before that like he hates interviews because like he thinks it's the most boring thing a person can listen to is an interview of a game designer. So he just doesn't like doing them. But when he does them, he has like a silly mask on, or he does a fucking sock puppet and like has it talk and stuff.
Yeah.
And I just get that sense from him to where like he writes such like deep and like provoking narratives that are just, I don't know, they could be morbid, but they can also have like a sense of hope to them. But they're like, I'm like thinking of the person that would write those stories, and I'm like, oh man, like they like must feel this sense of depression as well if they're writing from that place. But then you see him in an interview and he's fucking talking with a sock puppet. It's the polar opposite of what you
Yeah. Well, he's definitely got a pretty eclectic mind, because I remember playing Nier, and also from what I played in Nier Automata, it's even the gameplay itself shifts very rapidly between just like a regular action adventure game to over the top, like isometric action game to a shooter to a side scroller to a even like I remember
Forward,
visual novel parts and just it just jumps everywhere.
Yeah, the Nier Automata, because it does the endings, but it doesn't do it the same way as the first game. It just kind of like has like endings and you keep progressing. The second ending, you play as a different character, and the first ending, it's all been like an action game basically with like a few different elements there, but it's all been like an action game. The second time, you're doing a lot of like spaceship shooting segments, and it's like, all right, you played 9 hours of this action game, get ready for 7 hours of Galaga, or some shit.
Yeah, it's
And
really
it's like
bizarre.
nobody's doing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Place.
Greenland.
So, Alex, pick a location. Alex the Prophet, pick a
Greenland.
location.
Greenland.
Okay. So you're going to an ice convention in Greenland.
I thought the ice convention was in Iceland.
No, they're more common in Greenland. Because of the ice. And Yoko, you believe it or not, Yoko Taro is there. And he's got his head thing on. He's walking around bobbing his big head. And you run into him. You literally run into him. He's holding wine and it splatters all over his shirt. And then, but he's just smiling at you because that's what his mask is. It's just got a big grin on it. So he seems pretty chill about it, the whole thing. And then he goes, ask me one question. What do you ask him?
Like a video response.
Fair enough.
No, I will probably on like a serious note, I would probably ask him where his line is, if he's always trying to push himself outside of that, like like the graph I was talking about with like the barrier of like the unknown, like where his line would be, like what would be too far for him. That'd probably be what I would ask him.
Okay.
What do you think he would say?
Not sure, because I don't think we've seen him we've seen him reach a level of success now from his storytelling, but I don't think we've seen him reach that point yet to where he's like, I've done it. Like I can't go any further than this. Because I feel like once he does reach that point, that's probably when he'll exit the games industry, because he's known for like when studios are like, okay, here's a game and you're going to do it this way. He's like, well, I'm just not going to do it then. So yeah, I feel like whenever he does reach that point, he will just walk away.
Okay.
Make a video response.
Make a video response. It was nice seeing Yoko Taro at the Green Convention in Greenland.
It was an ice convention.
That's in Iceland.
No. Greenland is full of ice.
I set up the scenario would have been a grass convention, but
yeah,
okay.
See,
that sounds like something.
That's green.
That sounds
so
like something else.
Green convention.
Sounds like everyone's.
Hey, you don't know there's not going on in Greenland? That's probably what they're known for.
Is that why I saw Snoop Dogg there? I saw Snoop Dogg and I was like, what is he doing here?
He likes ice.
He's passing the green
grass.
Yoko Taro.
That's the real question. What would I do if I saw Yoko Taro smoking a joint with Snoop Dogg?
Make a video response.
Make a video response.
Wait, that's a pretty good, commercialization going on for us right there. Yoko Taro and Snoop Dogg. I see the subscriber
video
numbers.
response.
Could you imagine
Yoko Taro and Snoop Dogg passing green?
Yeah, could you imagine one of his games, but
no.
instead of like instead of like the opera inspired like haunting soundtrack, it's fucking Snoop Dogg
One of those
doing the
beats.
soundtrack. Yeah.
Who's down the street with Yoko Taro up in the joint?
This is big
That's the
head.
wheel. Yeah.
Hey y'all, don't forget to subscribe to them button mappers.